I realized that I have experienced brokenness, but I'm not broken.
Oh,
I don't
it.
have to identify as the brokenness.
Welcome, friends, to the third season of Heart to Heart with Michael, a program for the bereaved community. Our purpose is to empower members of our community. This season, we're taking a longer view of grief. Can we find healing? Can we find peace? Today's show is Healing Brokenness Through Prayer. Here with us today to discuss this topic is our guest, Alden Solovy. In segment 1, we'll learn who Alden Solovy is. We'll learn about his wife, Amy, and her tragic end. In the second segment, Alden will tell us about his passion for writing prayer. And finally, Alden will tell us about his current projects and where we can get some of his really good books. Alden Solovy spreads joy and excitement through prayer. A liturgist and a poet, his work has been used by people of all faiths throughout the world. He's written more than 700 pieces of new liturgy, offering a fresh new Jewish voice, challenging the boundaries between poetry, meditation, personal growth, and prayer. Alden is a teacher, a writing coach, and an award-winning essayist and journalist. He's an Eli Talk Fellow, speaking on falling in love with prayer. Alden's writing was transformed by multiple tragedies, marked in 2009 by the sudden death of his wife from catastrophic brain injury. As a result, he deepened his exploration of meditation, poetry, liturgy, and personal prayer as a healing spiritual practice. His third book, The Grateful Heart, Psalms and Prayers for a New Day, was released in 2017 by CCAR Press. His most recent book, This Joyous Soul, A New Voice for Ancient Yearnings, was released earlier this year. Alden, thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with you telling us about your wife.
Yeah, Amy was an artist, a photographer, a writer, and a clinical psychologist. She loved to travel. She was with a friend in Maine and fell. She hit her head and had traumatic brain injury. That was on a Thursday evening. I had already turned my telephone off for the night and had no news until 6 a.m. on a Friday morning. A policeman came to my door and said, "You need to call this hospital. Something has happened to your wife." I called the hospital, learned that she had about 24 hours to live, that she was non-responsive, and I needed to then, of course, call my daughters. My adult daughters were not living at home. Call them up and tell them, "Your mom's going to die today. We're going to go out to Maine to be with her for those last hours."
I just can't even imagine getting a phone call like that as a child. That moment must have been one of the most difficult things that anyone I know has ever been through. How do you find the strength for that?
Well, what I'll say to that, I appreciate your recognizing that, is that, in these moments, we do things that we didn't know how to do. I don't know how to tell my daughters that their mom is going to die. I still don't know how to do it, even though I did it. And yet we do those things. We step into what's needed in those really horrible moments. So as I was packing and trying to reach my daughters, my sister was on the phone making air transportation plans for all of us. My daughter from Denver got to the hospital, Eastern Maine Medical Center in Bangor, got there a few hours before my younger daughter and I got there. My younger daughter was living on her own in Chicago. We met at O'Hare Airport. We traveled together, hit horrible weather, hit this rain, and the plane was diverted. We had to drive a couple of hours to get to the hospital. So my oldest daughter was there by herself with her dying mother until we arrived. Sometime later, my sister-in-law arrived, and that evening the nurses began the conversation with us about organ transplant. The hospital was amazing. They really took phenomenal care of us. Sometime after midnight, they suggested we go to they maintain a family. It's like an inn for families who need to stay overnight. They suggested that we
Sure.
get a few hours of sleep, and that they would call us when the first brain declaration of brain death might be imminent.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere that morning, 5 a.m, 6 a.m, I got the call. I woke up my kids. I got over there first, and the kids came, and we spent the morning with Amy as she moved toward her her ultimate death.
How did that affect the kids?
My children watched their mother die. They saw her beautiful blonde hair full of blood. They were by her bedside when we were asked out of the room for the first declaration of brain death. They were with her and at her bedside when a local rabbi, Rabbi Dara Lerner, came and performed what's known as a bedside vidui, a deathbed confessional on behalf of someone who can't make a confessional for themselves. They said goodbye to their mother. They did those things, and they were devastated. This was on a Saturday morning. It was what's known as Shabbat Hagadol in the Jewish world. That's the Sabbath before Passover. By the time the organ donations were done and we got back to Chicago, and we had 2 days of mourning, 2 days of Shiva before Passover. And we had 2 seders, 2 of the ritual meals for Passover. The first ones without their mother there. We had an empty chair to hold her space. We didn't know what we were doing. We were just, trying to make it at that point.
You ran the Seder by yourself that first night and second night?
I did. We were surrounded by family. We asked certain people not to come who understood. We asked certain other people to come who we wanted to be near us. Frankly, in retrospect, I probably should not have run a Seder. I should have looked for other places for us to go. On the other hand, what would we have done? We were, at least there. We were a family. We were together. Yeah. We had each other.
I want to disagree with you. I think there's a lot of advantage to you having been there. Perhaps maybe someone else could have run it, but the idea that you're in your own home and not on exhibit in somebody else's home as the family that just lost their mom, it probably would be better to be home surrounded by family. I would think that as complicated as it is, it might even have been the best answer, but still one of the most difficult moments I can imagine.
It was tough. I would say the year after, the Passover after, was brutal. We were there, in a sense, for the first time without Amy, even though it was the second time, right? Because the first time we were in shock, and it hadn't even settled.
I know that your kids had difficulty grieving in any way that you would have expected that they would. Every time you approached them, they said, "Not now. We're not ready. This isn't how we want to grieve." How did you break that?
Well, I didn't. They were adults. They needed to be allowed to grieve on their own time. Just because Dad needed them to be okay didn't mean they needed to be okay. They were on their own particular journey. And they just said, "Not now." What I did for me was I wrote a prayer for them. I wrote a prayer, frankly, because there was nothing left for me to do as a father but pray for them.
And you can share that prayer with us now?
Yeah, that prayer is called For Bereaved Children. And I'm happy to read it.
Thank you.
Father of Jacob, mother of Rachel, source of awe and wonder, cradle and shelter, our children are lost in tears, crushed in sorrow, erased in loneliness, bent and broken, their hopes dust, their joys cinders, their dreams shadows. You who comfort Zion and Israel, comfort our children in this most grievous moment of loss, and show them the path from darkness to light. Renew their hope, rekindle their joy, spark their dreams so that they too will know your healing power, your salvation and grace, your loving kindness. Hold them, lift them, carry them, until, refreshed by your Spirit, they walk upright once again toward holiness and love, with charity and thanksgiving, humility and strength, in awe and righteousness, to sing your praise.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Tonight Forever by the Baby Blues Sound Collective.
I think what I love so much about this CD is that some of the songs were inspired by the patients.
Many listeners will understand many of the different songs and what they've been inspired by. Our new album will be available on iTunes, Amazon.com, Spotify.
I love the fact that the proceeds from this CD are actually going to help those with congenital heart defects.
Enjoy the music.
Home Tonight Forever.
Hi, my name is Jamie Alcroft, and I just published my new book, The Tin Man Diaries. It's an amazing story of my sudden change of heart as I went through a heart and liver transplant. I can think of no better way to read The Tin Man Diaries than to cuddle up in your favorite Hearts Unite the Globe sweatshirt and your favorite hot beverage, of course, in your Hearts Unite the Globe mug, both of which are available at the Hug Podcast Network online store, or visit heartsunitetheglobe.org.
You are listening to Heart to Heart with Michael. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on Michael's program, please email him at michael@hearttoheartwithmichael.com. Now, back to our program.
Alden, when we were talking in our pre-interview, we talked about the feeling of brokenness that many of us feel when we lose someone. Tell me how you feel your brokenness about losing your wife affects your life.
Yeah, thanks for that, Michael. Brokenness is an important topic. I think the first, call it breakthrough, that I experienced was in thinking about grief and joy. There was part of me that felt that if I was too joyful, I was somehow taking away from my grief.
We've all felt that guilt, yeah.
Guilt wasn't exactly what I was feeling. It was more like a feeling that it somehow was not giving it the Hebrew word is kavod, the honor that the grief needed. And so
it felt wrong to be happy for a while.
That joy couldn't be fully experienced because somehow it diminished my grief. I don't know how to word that differently. The breakthrough was really understanding the truth of the matter is that I can hold joy in one hand and I can hold grief in another hand, and my joys don't take away from my griefs and my griefs don't take away from my joys. And once I had that breakthrough, I realized that I have experienced brokenness, but I'm not broken. I don't have to identify as the brokenness. I use the phrase, I've experienced brokenness and I am still whole.
I love that.
Thank you.
We had a recent guest who said that grief and love were opposite sides of the same coin, that a grieving experience is actually a loving experience, but it's painful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The spirituality of that notion that grief and love are opposite sides of the same coin, that they're connected, is that I am a child of God. We are all children of God. And therefore, and the way I see the world, I am exactly what I need to be in this moment. I'm exactly what God needs me to be in this moment. So how dare I say I'm not enough? How dare I say I'm broken if I believe that I'm what God needs me to be right now? I have experienced brokenness, and I still experience it with regard to Amy's passing. And I'm whole. I don't identify as a broken man.
That, I think, is one of the most interesting lessons that's ever come out of this program. People struggle for a way to understand how to go on without giving up something. They think that moving on is moving away, and it really isn't if you know how to understand what you've been through and how to bring your loved one with you in some other way.
It gets to the issue of what I see as a pervasive problem in our culture, which is wound worship, essentially making the wound something that's holy instead of understanding the holiness in being wounded.
That's a very difficult concept, but if you work it through, I think that really brings people around to where they need to be at the end of a grieving process. And I say that carefully because I'm not sure the grieving processes ever really end, but a final position where you are still grieving but moving on, this is where you need to be. And I think that really sums it up.
One of the things I would say about your program is you very sensitively, you give people permission in the sense to be wherever they are in their grieving process. You're at the beginning, welcome. You're struggling, welcome. You've fallen back, if that's an appropriate way to put it, welcome. Wherever you are, this community supports you, which so there's no judgment.
Well, absolutely no. I think that is the only reason why we're here, is to not judge people, but to say whatever you feel is right because you feel it, and to help people where they are, to raise them up if that's what they need. Now, I want to ask you, you've already shared a really beautiful prayer with us, but I'd like to know why you decided to start writing prayers. Where did that come from in your life? Because it began before Amy.
It began about a month or so before Amy passed away. It was a gift, as far as I'm concerned. I have a morning prayer routine, which is essentially reading from some daily inspirational readers, then meditating, then praying from the classic Jewish text, the Siddur, the Jewish prayer book, then journaling. And just one day, as I was journaling, I wrote down a prayer. I thought, that's interesting. That's cool. And sure enough, the next day it happened. And the next day, 2 or 3. For about a month, I was writing, and my meditation was clear and clean. It felt as if I was full, as if I was being prepared for something. And I said, I wonder what this is about. I wonder why this is happening. And then, sure enough, we got the news about Amy, and everything happened at the hospital. We had the Passover Seders, and I felt completely empty and blank. And my reaction was, I get it. I was given a gift. I was given a spiritual, if you will, fill up of the tank in order to do these things that were so difficult. And now it's done. Frankly, I don't ever need to pray again, was my thought.
Yeah, but that didn't happen, did it?
No, that didn't happen. And it was really this thing with my daughters when I finally, with nowhere else to turn, because I couldn't fix them, I wrote a prayer, this prayer for bereaved children that I just read. That just opened the floodgates. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And it was my process of healing, which was writing healing prayers and prayers of celebration and prayers of mourning. And in the last 10 years, I've written more than 750 pieces of new liturgy. And this has been a huge part of my healing process.
Well, then I'm going to ask you to read another one that combines so many of these mixed feelings and these opposite forces within us that we feel from time to time. One of the hardest things to pass through after somebody dies is their birthday. And you have a birthday prayer. Can you share that with us? Yeah,
thank you. This is called Birthday No More. It appears in my book called This Grateful Heart. And I'm going to read it in Amy's name. There's actually a blank line in this to fill in either the name of the deceased or the relationship with the deceased. So I'm going to read it in her name. This empty space and time in my heart is yours, dear Amy. It is the space for yearning, the space of memory, the day your light came into the world, a day of sorrow for what was lost, birthdays that will never be. This day touches the depths of my grief and loss. This day touches a wound and makes it new. God of generations, be with me and my family as we remember what was and what might have been. We miss you.
I was 5 hours old when I had my first surgery.
Wow.
The only advice I can really give someone like that is to be there for your family.
This is life, and you have two choices. You either live it or you sit in a corner and cry.
I am Anna Jaworski and the host of Heart to Heart with Anna. Join us on Tuesdays at noon Eastern Time on Spreaker or Blog Talk Radio. We'll cover topics of importance for the congenital heart defect community. Remember, my friends, you are not alone.
If you've enjoyed listening to this program, please visit our website, heartsunitetheglobe.org, and make a contribution. This program is a presentation of Hearts Unite the Globe and is part of the Hug Podcast Network. Hearts Unite the Globe is a nonprofit organization devoted to providing resources to the congenital heart defect community to educate, empower, and enrich the lives of our community members. If you would like access to free resources pertaining to the CHD community, please visit our website at congenitalheartdefects.com for information about CHD, hospitals that treat CHD survivors, summer camps for CHD families, and much, much more.
You are listening to Heart with Michael. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our program, please send an email to Michael Lieben at michael@hearttoheartwithmichael.com. Now, back to Heart with Michael.
Now, I know you've written 4 books. Can you tell us about the books and where we can find them?
Sure, thanks. My first book is called Jewish Prayers of Hope and Healing. It's 150 pieces on a wide variety of topics, ranging from the cancer journey to the surgery journey to general prayers for healing to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, mental illness, addiction, hospice care, medical science, as well as all sorts of prayers on hopes and praises and families, love and friendship. This book was self-published. The idea was to just get myself out there, as was a second very brief book, which is in support of the Passover Seder called Haggadah Companion. Both of those are available on Amazon. Look for Jewish Prayers of Hope and Healing or Haggadah Companion. The next 2 books were published by the Central Conference of American Rabbis. This Grateful Heart is a book about times and seasons. So it talks about days, seasons, the Jewish Sabbath, Jewish holy days, other secular holidays. There's ends of life prayers, grieving prayers, memorial prayers. So this Grateful Heart and its companion volume, this Joyous Soul, which is a series of prayers that follow the Jewish morning worship service. So all of the core sections of Jewish prayer are reflected in various readings in that book. Both of those can be found on CCAR Press.org. They're also available on Amazon as well. So I appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit about them.
I just want to point out that although these books originally have, I would say, a Jewish focus, you have been read by almost every religion on the planet. I don't think that anyone who's not Jewish couldn't or shouldn't find something in these books for them. That's really important to me because, in my view, I see it as a gift to the rest of the world, and I think that's something special that maybe we don't do enough of.
I appreciate that. My work has been used by people of many faiths all over the world in times of joy and in times of sorrow. And frankly, I'm surprised at the great enthusiasm for modern liturgy that's out there. Lots of people are truly yearning for words to articulate their moments, their moments of encounter with the divine, their moments of grief, their moments of joys, special holidays. It's really quite amazing.
Is this something that maybe crosses all kinds of religious borders, that people are looking for prayers that are more relevant?
I would say that's one aspect. The other aspect is in Jewish tradition, at any rate, there's the general use of Tehillim, of Psalms, as a recited prayer to cover all kinds of situations. And in our modern age, folks seem to want very targeted prayers for very specific moments. And so that piece, I think, is reflective of our day.
What I'm hearing is very interesting, that basically people haven't changed all that much over the millennia, and that our yearnings to understand the things that happen to us haven't really changed.
Yeah, I think that's right. The yearnings are the same. Maybe the way things happen to us, that'll be different.
Right. Throughout the ages, people died, and other people wanted to try to understand that.
Right.
And I don't think that's changed. I just think we speak in a language now that we understand. It's not the same language, but the yearnings and the concepts really haven't changed that much.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. What I would say is Jewish prayer makes only one promise. And I think it's a profound and immense promise. And it goes like this: Baruch atah Hashem shomea tefillah. Blessed are you, God, who hears prayer. The great promise of Jewish prayer is that God, higher power, spirit, the divine, however you want to say it, that God is paying attention. God is witnessing my life. God is witnessing your life. How phenomenal is that your life, the death of my wife, the death of your daughter, the death of friends, the birth of friends, God is witnessing that. That's amazing.
I spent a lot of time stargazing, and you get two profoundly opposite feelings at the same time. You look at the universe and you say, I am great because I am a piece of this greatness. And then you see how big it is, and you say, I am nothing because all of that is so far away and I am so tiny. To think that in all of that distance and all of that size and space that somebody's listening to me, that's really nice. I appreciate that. And just finally, one of the prayers that really touched the team here when we were getting to know you was Peace Will Come. Can you share that with us?
Be a delight. Peace will come is from this Joyous Soul. Peace will come through the grace of God and the work of humanity. Compassion and kindness, forgiveness and love, patience and gratitude, justice and mercy, empathy and understanding, each act a yearning, each deed a longing for wholeness and tranquility in our world. You who makes peace in the highest heavens, guide our hearts and our hands in service to each other and your world, to bring peace to all the nations of the earth, all people, everywhere.
I have nothing left to say except thank you so much for being here. That concludes this episode of Heart to Heart with Michael. I want to thank Alden Solovy for sharing his prayers and so much more with us. Thank you, Alden.
Thanks, Michael. It was a pleasure to be here.
Please join us again at the beginning of the month for a brand new podcast. I'll talk with you soon, and until then, remember, moving forward is not moving away. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us. We hope you have gained strength from listening to our program. Heart to Heart with Michael can be heard every Thursday at noon Eastern Time. We'll talk again next time when we'll share more stories.
Friends, if you've enjoyed this program, please visit our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/heart-to-heart.